So while we have our precious human life, it's very important to develop the determination to counteract the 8 worldly concerns, and then the antidotes that actually counteract them. Because although we may have a perfect opportunity to practice the Dharma, when our mind goes chasing after the pleasures and comforts of the 8 worldly concerns, then we waste this precious opportunity, and also in the process create a great deal of negative karma by doing things to procure and then protect the things that will make us happy only in this lifetime. So it's always important to stretch our mind and consider future lifetimes. Consider what samsara is. Consider the situation of ourselves and all living beings in samsara. And thereby with a very expansive mind that takes into account the big picture, then to make decisions and to live our life and to do what is important in the long term, even if it means a little bit of discomfort or extra work right now. So that doesn't mean to exhaust ourselves, but it does mean to have some stamina so that we can endure doing, things that are even slightly uncomfortable or inconvenient. Because if we don't have the endurance to do that, then it's rather strange that we're able to endure samsara at all, not counteract it. Okay, so with the mind aspiring for your own and others' liberation and enlightenment, then let's listen to the teachings. Thinking it's really rather strange, isn't it, that we can't endure little minor discomforts and minor inconveniences, but we can endure samsara, which is filled with, such incredible amounts of physical, mental stress, suffering, and so on. Isn't it strange? We're so patient with samsara. Yeah, samsara, no problem. But some minor thing that we have is becomes huge, And so it's kind of inverted priorities, isn't it? And then we wind up really wasting a whole lot of time. Yeah. I was reading in the part I was working on today about some Chinese masters giving advice about cultivating bodhicitta, and really saying how we have to, not have a weak mind, not be cowardly and timid and easily inhibited and, can't bear anything. Because if we are, that indicates actually a great deal of self-centeredness, doesn't it? I always have to be comfortable. I have to win. I have to be right. I have to have things my way. I always have to have nice things, And absolutely no tolerance to be able to endure even a minor discomfort for the sake of the Dharma. So you can see, when our mind is like that, then we just waste this opportunity And then on our deathbeds, we don't have anything to show because everything we spent our life on is gone. It was gone the moment after we had it. Yeah. So I'm not saying push ourselves and become exhausted, that doesn't make much sense. But, to gradually develop some ability to have some fortitude, and some endurance of different things. Because we endure a lot for the sake of this lifetime, don't we? I mean, you go through this whole educational system and you stay up all night to take exams, but, we can't manage to even stay up until 9 o'clock to meditate. We go through so much difficulty. I mean, to keep a job and, when you work, you can't just take off every day that you don't feel like going to work, otherwise they're going to fire you. Yeah, so you have to have the ability to go to work even when you don't feel well and still be productive, and still, you have a family, you still have to take care of your family, whether you feel well, whether things are going your way or not, whether people are praising you or blaming you. Yeah, and yet, when it comes to the Dharma, we can't endure, we don't seem to be able to endure anything. It's rather strange, isn't it? Yeah. I need my little empire. I've noticed you've reduced your empires, but some of you are making good effort even with the small claw. But you have reduced the size of your empires. Yeah, but so strange. Okay. But anyway, we pledge to work for the benefit of all sentient beings from now until enlightenment, but we can't endure anything ourselves. Yeah, how are we going to work to benefit sentient beings when, somebody does the smallest thing and then, we're upset and out of sorts and offended and insulted and so on and so on, So we have to really think, what is important and keep our mind on that, and then these little things just let go, because, it's impossible to arrange all our duckies so that they're in line, and so that we have nirvana and samsaric pleasure at the same time. That almost rhymes. I could be a poet. Yeah. Okay. So we've been discussing the Bodhisattva vows. And to keep them, we have to endure a little bit of discomfort, don't we? Yeah. Otherwise, we're going to break them right, left, and center if we can't endure anything. Okay, so we're now going on to the misdeeds contrary to the perfection or the far-reaching ethical conduct. Okay, so there are 9 secondary bodhisattva precepts pertaining to far-reaching ethical conduct. So these are very interesting. There's a lot to think about in this upcoming set. Okay, so number 8, Chandragoman says, rejecting those of degraded morality. Okay, so abandoning beings whose practice of ethics has declined is a misdeed that is described as rejecting the objects of particular compassion. Okay, but those people who don't keep good ethical conduct, when we're working so hard to keep good ethical conduct and we're enduring all these difficulties and they're not, and yet we've got to be kind to them and not reject them, and they're doing such stupid things and they're ruining the reputation of the Dharma, and they're, just acting like such enormous jerks. And that's called rejecting the objects of particular compassion? Probably some pride, anger, yeah, maybe disgust or disdain, yeah. Okay, first, as concerns the object of the misdeed, Arya Sangha in his Bodhisattva levels calls them the wicked and immoral who create the causes of their own suffering. Sounds like us. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so there are two kinds of beings, human or otherwise, of degraded morality. The first are those who have not the slightest practice of ethics. Okay, so somebody that doesn't know anything about ethical conduct, and if they knew or they were taught, they don't care beans. Okay? Just read the newspaper. Yeah, plenty of them in public office and in other places as well. Okay, so they are completely immoral and lead depraved lives. The scriptures give us examples of people who have perpetrated one of the five heinous actions, killed their father or mother or an arhat, for instance. But such people are rare, so we should include in the first group all sinful people. That word sinful drives me crazy. I have no endurance for that word. Okay, so how about all people who create a lot of negativity? Yeah, so those are the people in that group, not just the people who do the five heinous actions, but people who, lie and cheat and steal and are dishonest and, renege on their commitments and, break laws and blame other people and create disharmony and all that kind of stuff. People who do the 10 non-virtues. Okay? Like I said, it just sounds like us. Okay? He says there's no lack of them, and the desire to reject them comes very easily. Okay? However, those who practice the Bodhisattva path should, on the contrary, feel compassion, especially for them. Why? Simply because they have produced, and most likely will continue to produce, the causes for tremendous suffering for themselves in the future. Okay? So we're doing prison work here at the Abbey. And sometimes when we mention to people that we're doing prison work or that we go into prisons, they look at us like, how can you do that? I mean, those people are so awful and they're so dreadful and they're frightening and they're immoral and they're horrible and indecent. And how can you, do anything for people like that? And how can you even bear to go in a prison to be with them? People look at you, in that way. And as one of my friends who did his PhD kind of on he developed a anger program for prison. He was saying that his experience in prisons, and to a large extent this is mine as well, is that those are some of the people, yes, are very difficult people, but some of them are regular people who happen to get caught. Whereas there's a lot of regular people on the outside who didn't happen to get caught. And of course it depends what neighborhood you live in, what race you are, because the police will police different neighborhoods, in a very different way. A lot of white collar, or a lot of let's say drug abuse and substance abuse by whites in wealthy neighborhoods is conducted inside. So the police, when they drive by, are not looking at that. They're thinking to protect those people from burglars, but actually those people inside of those houses are snuffing or shooting or drinking or, misusing pills or whatever. But the police don't see that and they don't catch it. Whereas in a poorer neighborhood, the drug business is done right on the street, and so they police it and they see the people and they're easily arrested. Yeah. So in any case, you know, we have a lot of prejudice against inmates in our society, and once somebody is incarcerated, it becomes very difficult for them to get a job afterwards. Yeah? And so, you know, people kind of look at us sometimes when we say we're doing prison work, like, what are you doing with those people? Okay. Now, like I said, some of the people like that I write to clearly have mental problems. And rather than be in a prison, they should be receiving psychiatric help. You know, in the prison, they're usually just drugged up the so much, you know, but they really need psychiatric help. Then there's other people who have, let's say, intense anger or intense desire, and it's difficult for them to control, and so they just did something, you know, like that, and of course got arrested. Yeah, but who amongst us have never done anything impetuous under the influence of desire or anger? Yeah, you might say, well, it's not as bad as what they did. Well, that may or may not be true. We don't know, you know, because it's amazing sometimes the things that people have done that they don't talk about, you know, and presenting one image to the world, and then a whole other thing is going on in their lives. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is that to be prejudiced against people who are incarcerated is really quite unfair, and I think it actually leads to more problems, because those people are eventually, most of them, going to get released and go back into the community, and they need jobs, and they need housing, and they need good friends. Yeah. So for example, like when I got the first letter, it must have been in, I don't know, 76, 77, 78, something like that, from an inmate, you know, I was so surprised because I had never thought of doing Buddhist prison work at all. Yeah. And it was the fact of having the Bodhisattva vow that I responded to this person. Yeah, and I didn't tell my mother. Bodhisattva vows outrule what your mother says. Okay. And so thus this whole thing started that we're all now involved in. Yeah, and it's because of having the, you know, this particular precept that, you know, somebody wrote, and it was a sincere question, and I can't just put the letter in the garbage, you know, have to respond. Yeah, and so I did, and we have this whole prison project now. Yeah?
We lack of questioning ourselves and what the system of tell us, because they tell, yeah, this is a bad person, this is a bad person, and we don't question that.
Yeah.
This is a bad person. Okay, the news tells this is a bad person.
Right.
So okay, I once saw a documentary in a philosophy class very long ago in high school, and about a prison in Norway, I think, in some of the Nordic countries, I don't remember precisely what. But in that prison, it completely shaped my world, because in that prison, the prisoners can go in and out. They have to make a time.
Mm-hmm.
But anytime they want, they can leave or they can come back.
Mm.
And what was very interesting for me, that was that they didn't keep a penal record for them, a criminal record for them, so they can have any job after that. So people won't judge them in the society, because I mean they were prison, but not legally after that. So nobody told the other people that was wrong. People treat them normally.
Yeah.
And we don't question that.
So you're saying that we're really educated, not only by the media, but also in our school system, you know, that somebody who is in prison is a bad person, yeah? And we don't question it, we just go along with it. And you're saying that there's, like other countries that have different kind of penal systems, where they really give the people some responsibility and don't have, you know, they don't have a criminal record following them around afterwards. And sometimes it can really turn out much better for everybody in that regard, you know, a much lower recidivism rate. Yeah. But yeah, definitely we don't question what the news tells us. And what I find especially interesting is if a poor person does an illegal act, we have one attitude, and if a rich person does it, we have a different attitude. You know, if a poor person, you know, breaks into somebody's house to get money, we have one attitude. If a rich person embezzles thousands of dollars or cheats people out of millions of dollars, we have a totally different attitude. Yeah. It's really rather amazing, isn't it? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mexico say that most of the people that are in jail are poorly approved because they couldn't have a lawyer to
Yes,
defend.
yes.
And that's why.
Yeah.
They do nothing so bad, but because they can pay a lawyer,
Yeah.
they can go out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same here, that the people who are poor, who don't have legal representation, or in our country they appoint somebody, but usually that person doesn't do very much. Yeah, and so they don't have adequate legal representation, whereas somebody who's wealthy can, you know, pay a top-notch lawyer. Yeah, and as a result find some way to get out of prison. Yeah, and we call it the justice system. Yeah, really rather amazing. Anyway, okay, so to watch, this is a good thing of watching our prejudice against people who are incarcerated, or even people who aren't incarcerated, who have done very negative actions. Yeah, and watch how we are prejudiced against them or discriminate against them. Oh, you know, and like I said, how if a person is wealthy and you know, and has a scam and gets $1 million, we think that's kind of great, you know? But if a poor person steals $100, that's really terrible. Yeah. So to even watch how we praise sometimes the negative actions that people do. Okay? Okay, so then the second group of people of degraded morality consists of those who have taken vows and made commitments to an ethic and have subsequently broken them. Sounds like us, yeah. But of course there's, you know, major transgressions and there's minor transgressions. But, you know, sometimes we meet people who have committed major transgressions and are no longer in the Sangha, you know, or I mean, if you look what's happening in the Catholic Church right now, people having major transgressions, or even with precepts that aren't root downfalls, let's say like drinking or something like that. You know, you may know monastics who have done that, or who have, you know, done other kinds of things like that. And sometimes it's really tempting. The mind gets so critical of those people to just say, you know, get out of here, you know, forget it. Okay, so this precept is particularly against having that kind of attitude. Yeah. So the action consists of forsaking or scorning anyone who falls in either of these two categories. Yeah, I think I told you the Zen story about the Zen master who had one student who was really awful and very obnoxious and not keeping the precepts very well and so on. And other students came, the very good students came and said, why don't you kick him out of the monastery? And the Zen master said, actually, you're the ones who should leave because you can handle yourselves, but he needs a special attention and compassion. Yeah. So it's that kind of thing. Okay. When it is out of anger or animosity that we look down on such beings or reject them, using their wickedness or their debased ethics as an excuse, it is a misdeed associated with klesha. Okay? Anger, animosity, and arrogance, because you're looking down. Okay? Doing so out of laziness or sloth is a misdeed dissociated from klesha. So it's a misdeed, but it's not as heavy. Okay? Doing it because we have forgotten the Bodhisattva instruction is a misdeed dissociated from afflictions as well. This is the case for many of the secondary misdeeds. When we simply forget to abstain from the action in question, it is still a misdeed, but one dissociated from afflictions. Thus, there are three ways to commit a misdeed dissociated from afflictions: out of laziness, out of sloth, and finally by forgetting the Bodhisattva instructions. Okay? So all three of those are examples of the misdeed not associated with afflictions. So there's several exceptions to this rule. It will not be a misdeed when we abandon these beings in any of the following circumstances. Okay, so there's some exceptions. One, we have reason to believe that it is best to ignore the wicked person for the moment, for it will help him or her to progress. Okay, so there might be a kind of situation where it's best just, to ignore that person or not reach out, because it will make them think a little bit better, think a little bit more about what they're doing and why, and so on. So it might help them in that kind of situation. Okay? Or two, we want to avoid upsetting a large number of people, or even, I don't know what a large number of people is, but, let's say you're, because some people when they do prison work are not very smart. Okay, and they go beyond a proper relationship when you're a volunteer in a prison. So they may have what Lama Yeshe called Mickey Mouse compassion, and so, oh, fine, when you're released, just come and live with my family, even though they don't know the person very well, or they don't know why they're imprisoned, or they don't know if, how safe it is to be with that person, and just out of some kind of funny compassion, compassion without wisdom, say, oh, well, come live in my house. And then your family gets very upset. Like, wait a minute, don't we have a vote in who lives here? And, we want to have some say-so too. So that might be an example of this one. Okay, where in that kind of case where a lot of other people are going to be upset, but you're reaching out, to help somebody with degraded morality, then it's better not to. Okay, and then the third situation is looking after them would be contrary to monastic rules or social conventions. Okay, so if, taking care of that person would make you, break your monastic vows in one way or another, or if it would just be really opposite to social convention, such that, people would get all stirred up about it and would wonder, like, what are you doing, being a Buddhist, acting in this kind of way? Yeah, so in those kind of situations also, then it wouldn't be a transgression. Okay? Here's an example. There's once in a while I get letters, and sometimes they're from people I don't know, but mostly they're guys that I've been writing to, and they'll say, "Oh, my release date is coming up. Can I come stay at the Abbey? You know, I need a place to sign for where I can go live when I'm released. Can you do that?" And you know, and I usually say no. Yeah. And the reason is, okay, first of all, it's not my decision to make. It's something that's the whole, it belongs to the whole community to make. But also because I feel that when somebody is released from prison, they need to get themselves on their feet in regular society. And then when they've been able to do that, then if they want to come to the Abbey, they know very clear what they're giving up. Otherwise, sometimes taking them in here is a route for them to escape being responsible for themselves and getting a job and earning a living and, you know, reestablishing relationships with their family and so on. And so actually it's better for the other person. It's going to be harder for them for sure, but it's going to be better for them to have to get themselves set up in society and not just, you know, come here because we'll take them. Anything else about that one? Okay, then number 9, Chandragaman says, not training for the sake of others' faith. Okay, what does this one read as? Not acting according to one's vowed trainings when it would generate or sustain faith in others. Okay. And the previous one was forsaking those who have broken their ethical discipline, not giving them advice or not relieving their guilt. Yeah. So, you know, really reaching out and helping those people with broken precepts or who just don't have much ethical conduct to start with. Okay, so this one says, this fault consists of not following the common rules according to our vows for individual liberation. So our Pratimoksha precepts. To inspire faith in others or strengthen the faith they have, we should respect all aspects of the precepts of individual liberation that we have by abstaining from drinking alcohol and eating after noon, for example. By failing to do so and thereby shocking or disappointing others, we transgress not only the precepts for individual liberation, but also the Bodhisattva precepts. The fault, therefore, concerns those who have taken the precepts for individual liberation, such as monks or nuns' precepts, as well as the Bodhisattva precepts. Okay? So as we come on, it comes out that this also applies to lay practitioners who have the 5 precepts, not just to monastics, okay? But the gist is that when it would not keeping our precepts for individual liberation, when it would be, you know, I mean, when we should be keeping them, and especially when it's going to make other people lose faith in the Dharma or lose faith in us or have a critical mind. Okay? When we fail to observe our discipline for lack of faith and respect, we commit a misdeed associated with afflictions. Disrespect leads to looking down on it or to minimizing its importance or to thoughts such as, that's for the people who follow the hearer's vehicle. as a follower of the Mahayana, I don't need to worry about those lesser aspects of the monastic discipline. It really doesn't matter if I drink a little alcohol once in a while or eat afternoon. And you find people who have that attitude. Yeah? If we neglect to observe our precepts for individual liberation out of laziness or sloth, it is a misdeed dissociated from afflictions. Once we have taken ordination and have committed ourselves to the Bodhisattva precepts as well, the observance of our monastic precepts takes on even greater importance. We should respect the precepts of ordination for the sake of others as well as ourselves, to inspire faith in lay people, strengthen the faith they have, and prevent it from decreasing. Okay? Now, we're going to come up to a Bodhisattva precept pretty soon that and then you also hear very generally that the Bodhisattva precepts and working for the benefit of others, it trumps the precepts for individual liberation. Okay, in the sense that the Bodhisattva precepts are more important, and so if you have a bodhicitta motivation, then if you don't follow the individual liberation precepts, it's not so bad. Okay? So there is that thought. But many people use that as an excuse to not train their mind according to the precepts of individual liberation, by saying, oh, but the Bodhisattva precepts are more important, and I'm doing this with bodhicitta for the benefit of all sentient beings, so, I don't have to, if I tell a little white lie, it's okay. If I cheat on my income tax, it's okay. If I, do this, that, and the other thing, it's okay because I'm doing it for the benefit of sentient beings with bodhicitta. Okay? And you hear this all the time. So this particular precept, is, and there is truth that if you really have bodhicitta, that is the case, and if you really have a good motivation, that is the case. But if you don't, if we took the pratimoksha precepts, we should keep them, okay? Now, people have different ways of keeping them. Yeah, and also in the precepts for individual liberation, there are exceptions for things, like for the one about eating in the afternoon. If you're sick, if you've been doing manual labor, if you get wet because you're raining, if you've been traveling, if you're exhausted, something like that, where it's going to adversely affect your health, or adversely affect, your ability to practice, then, it's not a transgression to eat in the afternoon. Yeah. Now, in terms of the alcohol one, yeah, it's soak, you dip your finger in, and then, or you take a piece of the two substances, and you just put it right here on your lip. But you find some people, I remember one time, Alex was giving a talk in Seattle. This was many years ago, and I went. And afterwards, we did soak. This is a group of people I didn't know. And they start pouring beer out for everybody, including me. And Alex and I are looking at each other, and and we said, "Excuse us? Oh, well, this is what we do, This is, soak is a party, and we have a party, and we're tantric practitioners, so this is okay." Yeah? No. No. Yeah. So, yeah. So, I think we got the point across here. Okay? Yeah.
We had a young woman who came here, and I was telling her we're getting ready for soak, and she was horrified on her face, was really, really scared. And I said, "Well, gosh, what's going on?" And she said, "Oh my gosh, I've had really bad experiences with soak." And then she proceeded
Oh.
And then I said, no, this is not what you're going to see here.
Yeah.
And so she really enjoyed it. And she stayed for a while. But it was, it was really interesting how scared she got.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a good example. You're saying that somebody came here, and when you said that we were going to do soak, she got very frightened. And then when you questioned her about it, she said that she was once at a soak where the people got drunk, and that was very scary for her. And I imagine it was makes you quite disillusioned as well as frightened. I mean, here are these people who are teaching you, and they're, they're really loaded, and and like, how much can I trust these people? So that's a very good example of, it destroyed somebody's faith. Yeah. So we should always, take care and keep our precepts well, not only for our own benefit, but for the faith, of others. And so, sometimes the way we keep precepts here isn't the way people keep them at other temples and so on. When we go there, if they keep it something stricter than we do, then we follow what they do. If they keep it looser than we do, we don't follow it. Okay? So that, yeah. Yeah.
How can you, if you follow your precept, how can you follow it stricter or less stricter?
Oh, well, like I'm saying, like this thing about eating in the afternoon. I have a friend who's a Theravada nun, and she's had 2 heart attacks. And when she's recovering from her heart attack, she still didn't eat in the afternoon. I mean, that's how strict they keep it. And if they eat in the afternoon, people will have incredible health problems, because they keep that precept very strictly. Yeah. Whereas in our tradition, we say, you need to keep your body healthy. It's very, very important. Because if you don't have good health, then it becomes very difficult to practice. So if you eat in the evening, because of health reasons, there's not a problem. Or if you've been doing a lot of manual work, and you're tired and you need the energy. Yeah.
For example, I am a Buddhist Mahayana, and I have 2 heart attacks. And I go to a temple or something that they are very strict on that. So what should I do?
Okay. Okay. So if you're someone in the Tibetan tradition, if you've had 2 heart attacks, and so you eat in the evening for your health reasons, and you go to a temple where they don't eat in the evening, what do? I would think in that case, it would be better not to stay if you feel that you need to eat, for health reasons, then I would say don't stay in the temple, because they don't serve food, and they would probably get very upset if you're a monastic, in their temple eating in the evening. Yeah, so I would say in that case. But if you felt your health was good enough, and for one day you could not eat in the evening, then go. Yeah, so I think it depends on the situation. Yeah, so there's many different precepts like this. And, in the West, we're often really pulled in very, very different ways, because the lay people don't know the precepts, and they're wanting us to do one thing. And then often, if we're with other people who keep the precepts in a different way, they want us to do another thing. And so we're often like, okay, we can't please everybody, so we have to negotiate it one way or the other, and and then that's just the way we do it. Yeah. Okay. There is some discussion amongst learned masters as to whether the secondary misdeed refers to everybody who has the Bodhisattva vow or specifically to those who have taken the precepts, or the ordination precepts, in other words, monastics. Bodhibhadra, one of Lord Atisha's spiritual masters, said in his commentary to Chandragoman's 20 verses that this precept is primarily meant for the ordained. However, the Great Way adds, nevertheless, it seems that a large number of the precepts for lay people with the vows of individual liberation are common to the precepts of ordination. Okay, so lay practitioner, the main precepts of not killing and stealing and unwise sexual, I mean, the one about sex is different, but not lying, not taking intoxicants, and so on. They're very common. So, it would apply in that case to somebody who's a lay person too. Yeah. So, how important it is if you're a lay person to keep your precepts when you're with other people. Yeah. And not just have this mind, whether you're ordained or lay, for example, that says, but it's just a little white lie, and if I told the truth, people are going to be offended. Which often means, I did something I don't want other people to criticize me about, so I don't want to tell them. Yeah? So, we have to really learn to be straightforward and think about our ethical conduct. Yeah, and of course admit our mistakes when we don't keep it. That's why we do purification on a daily basis, and why as monastics we do the posada twice a month. This is why the misdeed is described as failing to train in the common rules. Lay practitioners of the Bodhisattva path who also have the precepts for individual liberation should respect both categories of precepts by abstaining from drinking alcohol, for example. Okay. So basically what this precept is about is not rationalizing breaking your pratimoksha precepts by saying, but I'm working for the benefit of sentient beings. Yeah. That's basically what it boils down to. Because when we rationalize that, it disturbs other people's minds. I heard the story of one monastic who, I don't know where they were, but people were smoking grass, and he started smoking grass, and one of the people looked at him and said, "You're a monastic, aren't you supposed to not do things like this?" And he continued, And I said, "Well, what did you say?" And then this person said, "Oh, I just said, well, I'm human." That's what he said to the other person. Yeah. But this is the kind of thing that if you have the Bodhisattva vow, really thinking about the effect of your behavior on other people. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when they invite you, sometimes the food has alcohol or wine.
Yeah.
And you don't know.
Okay. So what about when the food has alcohol? If the food is cooked, the alcohol is no longer active. Yeah? I usually recommend, though, that if you have a proclivity for alcohol, then even though the alcohol's not in the food, the taste of the alcohol could make you start craving that, so it might be better not to eat it. But technically, yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. Or if you don't know the person before you go, to their home, just mention it to them and say, by the way, I know a lot of people cook with alcohol, but I thought I should let you know that I don't eat food like that. Yeah. Okay, number 10, doing little for the sake of others. Here it says, doing only limited actions to benefit sentient beings, such as strictly keeping the Vinaya rules in situations when not doing so would be of greater benefit to others. Okay, so here's that thing. It's a situation we have a choice between keeping a Vinaya rule or doing something of great benefit to others. Yeah, and so if you say in your mind, oh, but you know, I've got to keep this absolutely, completely, strictly, you know, and as a result, you miss out on the opportunity to benefit somebody, then that is a break of this precept. Okay. But on the other hand, if you rationalize your wish to break your precept by saying, I'm doing it for the benefit of others, then you break the previous precept. Okay? Yeah. Uh-huh.
Give an example of the first, first situation where you should break the benign in order to benefit a number of people, like
Oh, okay. Okay, what would that look like? Let's say, let's say there's, we have this this thing with our robes that we have to determine our robes or declare our robes that they belong to us. So if at the same time you're supposed to do that with somebody, but then there's the opportunity to really do something beneficial for somebody else, yeah, that would have a really great impact, but then you give that up and you say, oh, but I have to go and do this ceremony to bless the robes. Okay, not bless the robes, but declare the robes.
Like you would have to leave to do that, and you couldn't help
the other person, right? Yeah. Or I mean, I face this situation many times, because I'm not supposed to be alone in a room with a man. But when I do interviews, somebody doesn't want everybody else to hear. Yeah. So then, you sit alone in a room with a man, but there's a window in the room and you tell other people what you're doing and so on and so forth. Okay? Yeah. Because if somebody came to me very upset and I said, oh, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you, or we have to talk in the middle of the dining room, then that would be quite difficult for that person. Okay? Where were we? The Great Way describes the 10th secondary misdeed as following specific rules. It involves failing to do things that would be helpful to others because we strictly observe the specific rules of the precepts for individual liberation. Okay. In his boundless compassion, Lord Buddha manifested himself as a monk for the welfare of all living beings. He's going to lead into here of an example for this, okay? To allow living beings to develop their good qualities and reduce their faults, he underlined the importance of having few desires, scant possessions, and of being content with what we have. Lord Buddha lived by these rules himself and placed them at the very core of the monastic training. So simplicity is, in terms of possessions, is at the core of our training. He taught monks and nuns to follow these principles so that they might avoid committing many ill deeds. When we do not restrain our desires, we often get involved in harmful activities and thereby create considerable negative karma. On the other hand, by limiting our possessions and contenting ourselves with reasonable quantities of plain food and clothing, we also reduce the number of potential objects of attachment. Furthermore, as we are not caught up with acquiring ever more belongings and maintaining the ones we have out of greed and attachment, we are left with more time and energy to devote to study, reflection, and meditation. Okay, so that's the reason the Buddha set up the, many of the precepts for monastics, is so that we live a simple lifestyle. We don't have a lot of possessions, so then we're not involved in thinking of how am I going to get this, how am I going to get that. Yeah, and we're not involved in taking care of these things, and we're not going to get upset if they get broken and lost because we don't have them. Okay? And so like I was saying, even as a monastic, we have to think about when we buy things for the monastery too, and not just think, oh, this is for the monastery, we can buy it. We should really think, is this something that we really need? Yeah? Okay? And then he goes on, as our minds become stronger and more resilient to selfish desires, the wish to do more for others grows proportionally. We should then go beyond the initial step and instead of limiting the number of our effects, increase them so that we can use them to help others around us. Okay? So once you have a handle on your desire and your bodhicitta has increased and you really want to be of greater benefit, then it makes some sense to have more possessions if you use them for the benefit of others, or because with that change in your mind you want to use them for the benefit of others. Okay? Logically, once we have realized bodhicitta and taken the bodhisattva vow and are firmly intent on helping countless living beings, the monastic principle of limiting our possessions no longer applies, for it restricts what we can do for others. In fact, for the sake of others, never ourselves, we should have as many goods as we can. Okay? But it's for the sake of others, never ourselves. We should do that. Again, we don't use this as a rationalization to say, well, I'm practicing the Bodhisattva vehicle, so I don't need to have a simple lifestyle. I should have all these things because I use them for the benefit of others. Yeah? So not to rationalize and say that kind of thing. In the context of Bodhisattva practice, persisting in owning few possessions is therefore a fault as it conflicts with service to others. So this is talking about a person who's at a certain level in their practice. Okay? We commit a misdeed associated with afflictions when out of anger or animosity, without regard for others' well-being, we think, for example, never mind other people, I'm just going to continue to live in this small hut or small apartment. It gives me less work. So limiting our belongings out of sloth or laziness is a misdeed dissociated from afflictions. Okay? So, you have great bodhicitta, but, it's like, I don't want to take care of all this stuff and clean so much stuff, so I'm going to continue with my simple lifestyle. Okay? Instead of having more things that then you can learn, you can use for others. So, let's see how much I have. Okay, let me read till the end and then I'll comment. Nevertheless, until we gain control of our minds, and as long as we are still subject to many disturbing factors such as attachment, it is better to keep few possessions and content ourselves with less. Once we have fortified ourselves with a strong altruistic aspiration to enlightenment and are no longer vulnerable to the afflictions, owning great wealth is a notable advantage in bodhisattva practice. Possessions and wealth are neutral. It is only when having them prompts our disturbing factors that it is better to limit them. When great wealth no longer stimulates our afflictions and we can use it to benefit others without risk, it is a great gift. Each of us must determine which is our case. Mm-hmm. And I would add to that even if you are at a level where you can have great wealth and it's not going to affect your mind, it might still be better for other living beings if you show the aspect of living a simple life, because they need to have a simple life. Okay? So the teacher might, have bodhicitta and be able to do all sorts of things. But then they do that, then the students are going to say, well, our teacher, has a Mercedes, and our teacher this and this and this, so it must be okay, because people copy their teachers. Yeah, and so if you're the teacher in that situation, if your disciples aren't really capable, and they don't have that level of mind, and they have a lot of attachment to these things, then really out of kindness for your disciples, you should, even though you aren't attached to these things, still live a simple lifestyle, like Lord the Buddha did. I mean, that's why the Buddha stayed as a simple monk. He could have had a lot of possessions, but he chose not to, and it was an example for us. Yeah. So this gets into some very interesting topics, because as individuals we may not have a lot of possessions, but sometimes monasteries have a lot of possessions. Yeah, and the prayer hall might be very, filled with all sorts of things, or even the place where you receive guests, very lavish and beautiful furniture and china and all sorts of incredible things. And it's an interesting thing, because I remember talking with one Lama about this, and his feeling was, if you have a very beautiful temple and these kinds of very nice things, even the place where you receive guests, then more people will want to come to the temple, and that's good for them. It attracts them. Yeah. And my argument was, well, yes, I understand that, but then it could also make other people criticize the temple, because the temple has more wealth than they do. And if you look, this was one of the main criticisms that communism had against Buddhist temples, was they were so wealthy, and the rest, many people in the ordinary population were very poor. And so it really created a lot of bad feelings, and this was the rationale for destroying the temples and the monasteries. Yeah. So it's an interesting question, And sometimes you meet lay people who really, they want the temple and the monastics to have very, very luxurious things, because, maybe they're somebody who's quite wealthy, and and they have a lot of respect for the Sangha, and so they want to give all these kinds of things. Yeah? So in one way they have a mind of faith. It makes them happy. Other people also might be happy to see, such beautiful things around when they come to the monastery. So some people might be pleased by that. Other people, it might really criticize. And, I thought these people renounced. Why do they live in a place where they have more luxury items than we do? Yeah. So I tend to be quite sensitive about this and side with the latter position. But I certainly have been to temples where I've seen the other thing, really incredible stuff that they have. And I always feel a little bit uncomfortable, like we're renunciates, Then I've also been to temples, or I've seen different people who receive a lot of donations and a lot of gifts and things like that, but they don't really keep it in the temple. They use it for social welfare projects. So instead of using the money and so on to beautify the temple, they do projects for society. So I remember once I was at a temple in Penang, Malaysia, and I was so impressed there. I finally met the master from there a few months ago. He wasn't there when I visited, but it was, quite a large temple. But, it wasn't real elaborate or anything. But he had set up an old folks home and also a kindergarten for the kids. And he had the little kids go and visit the old folks. It was perfect, It was like so good because the old folks were just delighted to see all these little kids and so happy, you know. And then he had a clinic, and I was thinking, wow, this is so wonderful. And, you know, it's because he had, you know, there were disciples who gave him the money and he chose to use it in this way. And also because he had many disciples who ran these things. So there were so many volunteers. Yeah, I don't know, he might have paid a few people, but, you know, many, many volunteers doing this. And it was very beautiful. Yeah. And when I went to Singapore also, Venerable Phot Kwan, who I stayed at her old folks' home when I first arrived. And, you know, she had a temple, and then she used donations to make an old folks' home for destitute old women. And, you know, so they had a place to live. And then, you know, a few times a week, they would all do chanting together. This was very sweet. And then she also eventually built, she's the one who built Taipei Buddhist Center, the place where I teach. Yeah. And so she used the donations that she got and built this huge, very beautiful Buddhist center that's very simple, but really beautiful. And that all the different Buddhist groups can use. Yeah? So, you know, you really see people who use their offerings like this in, you know, in a way, a positive way for society. And I think that creates, I think it makes other people happy, and it stops criticism, and it, you know, and we should do something to benefit society. You know, we should. And this is something that, you know, Buddhism has been much slower to do than Christianity, for example, you know, because sometimes we're so focused on let's get out of samsara, and then doing, you know, our meditation and study to get out of samsara, that we don't get involved in these social welfare things. On the other hand, you can get involved in the social welfare things, and you're so busy you have no time to practice and, you know, and study anymore, and that's another extreme, okay? But, you know, what's very good is within a group, if you have some people that are more inclined to offering service, that they do those projects, and then the other people who are more inclined to study and practice can do those things. So you have some kind of balance in there, yeah? And I think it's good. Okay. Anything? Yeah.
I thought of something that related to the Teachers Tuesday on when we were talking about people in Bodhisattva and just, you know, their dilemma and what they're not to give them. Well, I remember just one way to work up with that is that when I studied there, the program director of the program I was doing actually gave all the students a sheet with a list of the different charity organizations in the area, so that if we wanted to make a donation to a legitimate charity.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So the question that came up about how to work with the beggar situation in Bodh Gaya, then when you were on a program abroad, they gave you a list with the authentic charity organizations that really help the people in the area. Yeah, that's very good. Very good.
Well, I'm thinking more about number 8. Is just having critical thought?
No, it's not just for, okay, number 8, the one about the people with depraved morality. So it's not just like a passing critical thought, but it's like getting so negative and just like, I don't want to have anything to do with this person, you know. So kind of, you know, just no compassion towards their situation, yeah. But on the other hand, you know, if it's going to be better for that person if you remain aloof so that they get the idea, oh, I did something that's not so good, yeah, then that's something else, yeah.
When you see your mind and you know you have difficulties, you can't do it at the moment, but you know that you want to do it eventually, to open your heart, but at that moment it's too much.
Yeah.
I have of myself too much affliction, so I can meet that person. But my desire is to. So
Yeah. Okay, so you're showing the situation of somebody that you might have a very judgmental attitude about because they have, you know,
my buttons.
no, yeah. Well, no, here in this, they've pushed your buttons because they've broken precepts or they have no ethical, foundation or something like that, and they're doing a lot of negative actions. And so it's pushed your buttons and you get very critical of them. But you're saying you realize that you're critical of them and you really want to have a kind heart towards them. But at that moment, your afflictions are so strong that it's hard to get from point A to point B. Yeah. So I think just the fact that you notice that your mind is critical and that you have the idea of, I don't want to think like that, there already you're opposing that negative thought. You're realizing that there's something wrong with the way you're thinking and that it's opposite to the values you have. And even though the afflictions are very strong at that moment and you can't control them, you're definitely going in the right direction. Okay? And so maybe you can't control your judgment at that time, but later on you go back and you sit on the cushion and you really work with your mind, and then you develop more understanding and compassion for that person. Yeah. So the precepts are designed to lead us in the direction we want to go to. So we have to try. It was like the other one with the second auxiliary one about following thoughts of desire, that we've got to try to oppose them. And if we try and we still fail, we've done our best, and it's not a full transgression like that. Okay? But it's when we just say, well, it's too strong, I'm not even going to try, or we just buy into the idea of the affliction saying to start with. Yeah. Then we're going opposite to the Bodhisattva way. So we can see sometimes, that other people do behavior that we feel sometimes we'll feel disappointed in them, or disillusioned or something. They'll do something negative and we thought, but I thought you were beyond that, and then they do something like that. So it's the case when that happens, to really work and try and develop some patience and fortitude and compassion for that person. But that's not Mickey Mouse compassion of, oh, well, it doesn't matter what you did, but, compassion that frees us of our judgment. But on the other hand, when it's us and we're tempted to break a precept, we shouldn't just say, oh, well, other people need to be compassionate with me. It doesn't matter if I break my precepts, because that is going against the following one, which is, not keeping our precepts when it would cause other people to lose faith or, be disappointed in us or in the Sangha or in Buddhism in general or whatever.
Two of them need to practice their compassion.
Right, yeah. Yeah, they're so compassionate, it doesn't matter if I break my precepts. No. Okay.